Alright guys, so this is the second part of Unit 1.2, Day 5. You should have already done the isosceles triangle section. If you haven't, stop this video, go back and watch that one first. You need to do that section and get that checked off before you tackle this one. This section is going to be on equilateral triangles, and they have two sections that we want to talk about. If they're equilateral, then they are also equiangular. Now, if you look at those two words, they both have the prefix equa, and that means equal. Lateral refers to the sides, and angular refers to the angles. So in other words, equilateral triangles have all equal sides. So I'm going to write that down here. All sides are equal. Equiangular means that all the angles are equal. All angles are equal. Now, what's special about triangles, too, we learned in the last section that all the angles in a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. Well, if all the angles in the triangle are equal, what does that mean that each angle has to be then? If all three of them add up to 180, and all the angles have to be equal, what does that split evenly? Well, 180 split into 3 is 60 degrees. So that means that each of these angles, if this was an equilateral triangle, which obviously it's not drawn to scale, but that's okay, would look like that. Alright, so we're going to do a little bit of math to work with that as well, and show you how you can use that to solve different parts of these triangles. Now again, remember these little tick marks right here? Those show that the sides are equal to each other. If there were only two, it'd be an isosceles triangle, but there are 3. That means all the sides are equal, and if it's equilateral, it must be equiangular. Okay, the two things have to go together. So since all these sides are the same, that means all the angles are the same, which we just learned means that they all equal 60 degrees. All right? So automatically, I can tell that this x has to be 60 degrees. I don't even have to know anything else. If it's an equilateral triangle, automatically 60 degrees all the way around. Okay? Now, in this one off to the right, same kind of deal. They don't show us that the sides are equal, but this time they show us that 2 of the angles are 60 degrees. Okay? Well, if they all have to add up to 180, I've got 60, 60, together that's 120. That means that this angle must also be 60 degrees, which means that it is equiangular. And like we said, if it's equiangular, it must be equilateral. Okay, those two things go together. So that means that all 3 of those sides have to be equal. It tells me that one of them is 9. That means every other side has to be 9. Well, that's pretty easy to figure out that x equals 9 then. Okay, so kind of straightforward basic stuff for these first few. The other 2 problems we're going to look at have a little bit more work that go into it, but they still use the equilateral properties. So let's look at example number 2. Again, check for these symbols. Check out these tick marks on the sides. If they're on all 3, that means it's an equilateral triangle. Okay, and I'm going to say this again. If all the sides are equal, all the angles must be equal. You're going to hear that a lot because I want to get that kind of drilled into your brain. That means that these 3 angles are all the same, which remember, what did we talk about a couple minutes ago? They all have to be 60. Okay, and in fact, it tells us that this one is 60 degrees. That means this one is 60. That means this one is 60. Okay, now I know there's a 2 here. That is not 2 degrees. Okay, so do not write down 2 equals 60. That doesn't even make sense, first of all. Second, it's talking about a symbol. Okay, it's talking about 2 is the symbol for the angle, kind of like angle A, angle B, or angle C. Okay, that's what that means. So 2 is just referring to this piece up here. That means that I have to figure out what x is in order to make this angle equal 60, because we just said they're all 60 degrees. Okay? Which really means that x plus 70 has to equal 60. Okay, well that's pretty basic algebra. Move the 70 to the other side. And I get that x is equal to negative 10. If I was to plug negative 10 into this, makes this angle equal 60. Okay, pretty straightforward. This last example we're going to do has a little bit more work. I've got two triangles, and let's kind of break those triangles down. If I look at this one, is this an isosceles? Is it an equilateral? Is it a scalene? Right now they give me 2 tick marks, so I know it's at least an isosceles triangle. Okay, well let's work with that. What do we know about isosceles triangles? 2 of their sides are the same, and 2 of their angles are the same. Okay, well let's look at those sides and figure out which 2 angles. I know that was kind of poorly drawn. Okay, but if I kind of go diagonal from the tick marks, here are my 2 angles. So x and this angle over here have to be the same. Okay, so I figured out that much before I've even done any math. All I've done was look at the picture, figure out that this is isosceles, and work from there. This one, okay, it tells me this is 60 degrees. Okay, that doesn't automatically mean it's equilateral, so let's take a look at some of the other information they give us. Let's kind of erase this actually. There's a little bit too much going on. Okay, so I've been told that this is 60. And it also tells me that this and this are equal. Okay, well I know that if those 2 sides are equal, then the angles that are opposite from those 2 sides must be equal. So let's go from this side. Okay, well that means that this is one of the angles. We'll go opposite from this side and get this angle. So these 2 angles are the same, which means that they're both 60. Tells me that one's 60 over there, this one's got to be 60. Okay. So now, based on the other triangles we worked with up above, that must mean that this guy is also 60 degrees. If you want to work kind of the long way around, they all have to add up to 180. I already know this is 60 and this is 60. Do the math. You'll figure out that this one is 60 as well. Okay, so I figured out a lot of stuff about my triangles so far, just from observing things and doing some pretty simple math. Okay, we already knew that those 2 are equal from the math we did earlier, or the observations we made earlier. Now the tricky part is getting from this triangle to this triangle. This is the part where you have to kind of bridge the gap. Okay, so I'm going to erase that for a little bit. And let's just rewrite this. I know that this is 60, and I know that this is 60. Okay, so right here is where they're connected. What's this little box right here mean? Hopefully you remember that that means that that whole angle has to be 90. So from here to here is 90. Now I just figured out that this corner is 60. That means this remaining piece has to make 60 get to 90. Well, how much does that have to be then? 90 minus 60 means that this piece is 30 degrees. Okay, so we're getting some of the pieces to the puzzle here. I know that those 2 are equal to each other, okay, because we talked about isosceles earlier. These 2 sides are equal. That means the angles that are opposite from them are equal, so I already knew that. So in this triangle, I've already got 30 degrees gone. The whole thing has to add up to 180. So take a couple seconds. How can I figure out what x is? I've given you a ton of information here. If I know that this is 30, and I want to figure out the remaining piece here, think a little bit, pause for a couple seconds, try and work through that. If you can figure it out on your own, that's fantastic. Okay, pause, Push play when you're ready to hear what the answer is. Okay, so let's look at this guy. These three angles together have to add up to 180. I've already got 30 degrees taken care of. I know that this is x, and if these two are the same, that actually means that that other angle is x. You can have variables be the same for two angles, it's okay. Some of you might already have thought about a way to solve this in your head, which is great. You can do that too. I'll talk about that in a second. But I kind of wanted to show the algebra way to connect it to what we learned previously. This is really 30 plus 2x. X plus x is 2x. Okay, and then from there, a little bit of algebra to get x by itself. Divide by 2. I believe that would be 75. So each one of them would have to be 75 degrees. Okay, another way you could have figured this out, if you know that 30 degrees is gone and this has to add up to 180, you could have done 180 minus 30. That would have left you with 150 degrees. That means that those two angles together have to make 150. You know that they're the same degree, so split 150 into 2. Gets you the same thing, 75 degrees. So no matter which way you thought of it, you should get the same answer for that one. Kind of really drew that one out to walk you through some of the steps with that. Some of you might have figured it out faster. Some of you might need to rewind and hear that section again, or maybe even raise your hand and ask for some help and some clarification. Whenever you're ready, the last 3 problems at the bottom are your practice problems, your assignment. So please complete that and make sure you get it checked by one of the teachers so that you can get your homework checked off for the day.